We have currently got some Wi-Fi issues, which we're hoping will be resolved very soon. Okay, thank you. If you can bear with us, thank you. Good evening. I've got an echo. Good evening, and the time is 7:04, and I apologise for the slight delay in starting the meeting. And welcome to the first meeting of Planning Committee B. Before we continue, I do need to read the webcasting announcement. I would like to remind everyone that this meeting will be filmed live or recorded and uploaded to the internet and will be capable of repeated viewing. Therefore, by participating in this meeting, you are consenting to being filmed and to the possible use of those images and sound recordings. If any public speakers on Teams do not wish to have their image captured, they should ensure that their video setting throughout the meeting is turned off and set to audio only. Members and public speakers are reminded to activate their microphones before speaking and turn them off when they have finished. Before we actually continue to the formal agenda, I would just like to point out that this committee has been formed as was agreed by the Council following the report of the Planning Advisory Service. Although members, you are all aware of the changes, I'd like to clarify a few constitutional points for the members of the public, our speakers and those watching the webcast. Ward members are obviously here to represent their residents' opinions and views and add much valued additional first-hand knowledge. But I would remind, I've got a little bit of the sheet, sorry. But I would remind the committee that ward councillors cannot determine applications in their own wards. When this is relevant, I will ask the ward member to stand down from the committee and invite appropriately nominated substitute members to take their place. So at this time, you will literally move, if you will, to the other side of the chamber. So it just clarifies who is speaking as a member of the committee and who is speaking as a ward member. I would also like to confirm the order of speakers now. So after the planning officer has presented the application, the first speaker will be any objector to the application, followed by representation from the parish or town council. And following that, the applicant or their agent will be able to speak. After all those people have spoken, any other members will speak, and then ward councillors will be invited to speak. This gives the ward councillor the opportunity to pick up on any points they think needed to be emphasised. I think that is the points that I need to make at the moment. I'd just like to introduce the people who are attending the meeting up here. So we have got, to my right, we've got Councillor Hoffman, who is our Vice Chairman. And then to his right, we have the representation from Democratic Services. So we have got Laura Kerman, Matt Picking, and the webcaster Natalie Cole, my apologies. And then to my left, we have Robin Hellier, our Tree and Landscaping Officer. We have Marie Claire, Planning Officer, and we have Amanda, thank you, Amanda Apkar from the legal department. We also joined the meeting by planning officers who are going to be presenting each item. Right, so members, we have got, I think we're all aware that if we just carry on, I just want to change the order slightly, and I think I will just cover that now while I'm speaking. But we have got a lot of public interest in item 9, which is the fir trees at Tidy's Lane. I would suggest, if it is okay with members, that we actually need to move that up to the beginning of the agenda. It will save people waiting through the earlier items, and indeed might allow Robin to escape if you want to. So are members all happy that we move item 9 up? Thank you. Right, so in that case, I can now return to the agenda at item 2. The advice for public speakers of planning committees, this is laid out in pages 4 and 5. People who are speaking, I know you have obviously read the guidelines, and indeed the Democratic Services would have gone through the details, but I would like to emphasise, please, the importance of the 3 minutes. At the end of your 3 minutes, a buzzer will sound, and it's much, much nicer for you if you round off naturally rather than being told 10 seconds after that buzzer, you've got to wind up. So please do keep to that 10 minutes. No, 10 minutes? You nearly had ages. If we could keep to the 3 minutes, we would appreciate it. Thank you very much indeed. So moving on to item 3, can we have apologies for absence, please?
Apologies for absence have been received by Councillor Stocker.
Thank you. And item 4, substitute members.
Substitute member for Councillor Stocker is Councillor Tim Matthews.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Councillor Matthews, for standing in. Thank you.
Chairman, there is also an additional substitute for later in the agenda, which is Councillor Ian Allgood, and that will be for Councillor Kaufman. So Democratic Services have been advised within the time frames for that.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you. Right, so members, are there any declarations of interest, please? Councillor Amos.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Not a declaration of interest, but in view of what you've said quite rightly, just to declare that I will not be taking any part in agenda item 8, and nobody will be substituting for me on that one.
Thank you. Any further? Right. Yeah.
So, thank you, Chair. So I'm going to declare an interest in application EPF 0641/24, which is the Top Oak Public House, because I know the speaker for the applicant very well over many years.
Thank you. I also need to add the third declarations on exactly the same item, item 8, by virtue of the fact that I am one of the ward councillors for that area. So I will, at that point of the meeting, step down from chairman, and I will sit with the non-committee members and address the committee as a ward member. I think we'll take it item by item in terms of the organisation, if that's okay. Right, okay, so definitely be done. And so item 6 are the minutes. Members, you have got 2 sets of minutes attached to your agenda. We've got the minutes from the the old Area Planning Subcommittee South, held on Wednesday the 7th of August. And we have got the minutes of Area Planning Subcommittee West, held on the 28th of August. Councillor Williamson.
Thank you, Chair. Democratic Services are aware, but on the 7th of August meeting, item 24, site visits, it was actually Councillor Wiskin that proposed the site visit. So the minutes are being amended, I believe.
Thank you.
Councillor Williamson, yes, thank you. You did make us aware of that, and they have been corrected in the actual minutes online. However, as they were formed part of the pack, that correction hasn't been pulled through.
Right. Councillor Amos.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Some people tend to be very pedantic, and I'm not trying to be pedantic, but I didn't want there to be any challenge subsequently. Minutes usually go through fairly well. Didn't want to be any challenges subsequently, so perhaps we can record those councillors who were present at South and at West who approved these minutes.
I think that's very, very wise, very wise. So if members are happy then, if we look firstly at the minutes for the Subcommittee West on the 28th of August, could we just confirm if any of our members, on which members were present at that meeting? So Councillor Lee, is it just Councillor Lee? It is. It is, I think it is. Okay. Members, are we happy to take Councillor Lee's opinion? Our options here are we either accept that the minutes with Councillor Lee's backing, that we accept the minutes. If we're not happy, it would mean the minutes going up to full council to be verified. Okay, thank you very much indeed. And can we also confirm that somebody was here for the meeting held on the 7th of August? I was going to say we know that Councillor Williamson was there, and members, are we happy to agree those minutes? Lovely, thank you very much indeed. Right, that leads us very nicely now on to the item. So I'm looking now at, actually on the agenda, it's item 9. EPF 069124, Fir Trees, Tidys Lane, Epping. I do have some information that I just need to add before I hand over to the landscape and tree officer. I do need to inform members that when we were considering the site visits at the chairman's briefing, we were of the opinion that we had detailed professional reports in front of us, and alongside the fact that the tree is clearly visible from the public highway, we determined that a site visit was unnecessary. However, subsequent to this, our Vice Chairman did attend a site visit with the officer, but unfortunately this invitation was not extended to other members of the committee. In such circumstances, I would like to ask that members are satisfied that the reports in front of them enable them to make an informed decision. Members, your opinions. Thank you. Right, thanks very much indeed. If I can hand over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, members, ladies and gentlemen. Let's see if I can make this work. I think we'll whiz through this.
Yeah.
Sorry, bear
That's
with.
okay, that's no problem.
As I flick through here, I have the unenviable task here tonight to present the case to fell the Wellingtonia at Fir Trees. Here we go. The case has been many months in the deliberation due to the importance of the tree, the specimen redwood, significant landscape asset, and due to the number of objections, petition, representations, it's been necessary and right to bring it before this planning committee. I'm not intending to go through the report, which is hopefully reasonably straightforward in terms of how I've explained the evidence, but I just want to clarify that my role as a council tree officer in this case is to examine the evidence, the data that has been submitted and presented, and once I'm satisfied that I have sufficient information to be able to make a recommendation to you, the members. The test that I'm constrained to apply is, does the data that's been provided and the professional opinion on the balance of probabilities, which is a fairly low level, 51% credibility, does that provide sufficient evidence to prove a causal link between this fine redwood tree and the damage that has occurred to the flat number 5 at Fir Trees, Tidys Lane? So the slides show, in case anyone's uncertain, my presentation has gone a bit awry, but the yellow box basically points towards, I don't know if anyone can see my cursor wiggling around. I don't think it's moving at all. Anyway, can I zoom that in at all? Yeah.
It's Amanda showing.
Okay, is that going around there? Yes, okay. So yeah, there we are.
Sorry, I can't.
And then how do I go back? Oh, yes. Yes, so essentially it's the corner tree. And before we go through that slideshow, I just wanted to further clarify that the argument or arguments about the flat block that we can see on the right there, having substandard footings and being at the end of its useful life is not really strictly relevant in the matter of this meeting. I'm therefore obligated as a council officer to adhere to my planning reasons and the legal facts that will avoid exposure of the Epping Forest District Council to costs, third-party costs. So essentially, the retention of this iconic, word used in one of the representations, this iconic tree is pitched against the cost of stabilising the building, and it is for members to deliberate the more the ethical, aesthetic and environmental value that have been expressed in the groundswell of public opinion in favour of the tree against the potential cost of underpinning or other viable engineered solutions. So, we've cracked into there. This is the most common view that most of you who are local will be familiar with as you approach the traffic lights. It's clearly a major landscape feature. You can see a few gaps in the foliage, a little bit of dead wood, degree of unevenness in the crown. This is taken from within Tidy's Lane and shows the trio, the three big trees. The tree to the right is certainly larger, in probably better condition, and the cedar, which is the sort of apparently spindly tree in the middle, is a younger tree and has struggled with suppression from these two larger and much older neighbours. So yes, this is again just at the junction, just to illustrate some gaps in the lower middle part of the crown and some overextended pendulous laterals that extend over the road and also lower down. That's not to say that, you know, we could purely prune these trees and it will resolve the matter, but there are options of that nature. So, as the name suggests, fir trees. It's named after the redwoods, even though they're not actually fir trees, but I won't dwell on that. The next slide simply puts into... hang on, go backwards. This is our view from sort of the west, close to where the traffic lights are, and gives you an impression of T4, which is the best tree of the bunch. Big, strong, famous trunk, good uniform crown, dense, vigorous foliage. This is the champion of the group, and this is a road view of the cedar and T2, the subject tree, with our flat block behind at around 10 metres distant. Very quickly, I've been able to receive photographs from the tenant of the flat to... I don't know why it's on such a weird angle. Maybe they had to sort of hold the camera up at a funny angle. Essentially what that's designed to show is that the door has... the door frame in relation to the door has moved such that the door cannot be closed. The front door, in fact, was either unable to be closed or unable to be opened. So there was quite an emergency situation in remedying that by sawing bits off the top of the door to ease that problem. Again, this is photographic evidence prior to fairly recent superstructure repairs. This is in the hallway and shows a significant but not new crack in terms of historic incidents of this kind of cracking in the building. The owner, who bought the flat in the early 2000s, was aware of cracking back then and has, repaired them over the years, assuming that they are superficial settlement cracks. 2014 produced a claim but lacked any evidence of roots, and there were other deficiencies in the evidence that I was able to discount, and duly the case was withdrawn by the engineers. Here we have evidence of tile damage on the wall, actually, that's moved the least. This is very close to it's furthest away from the trees, but something I wouldn't necessarily definitely attribute that to movement, but there's something causing these tiles to become dislodged. And therefore, yes, the arboricultural report concludes that there are conditions in the soil which is a shrinkable clay, not, I might add, a very highly shrinkable clay, and it's not far from a different soil strata, but the identification of a high shrinkability of the clay, along with evidence of desiccation or drying out, the moisture level at depth down as far as 2.5 metres, has indicated that there is an artificially high level of moisture abstraction by vegetation. The obvious extraction also of roots that tally with the redwood species, whether it's T2 or T4, somewhat depends on the fact that the trial hole was bored at the corner closest to T2, and I asked for more clarification on that. That wasn't forthcoming from the agent. Obviously, there is this significant group of trees with that potential to abstract and influence moisture in the soil, and obviously volumetric change below foundations. The replacement option is academic, but would occur. So we have quite simply a pattern. The pink line is the 0.7, which is actually at the junction between the party wall between flat 5 and flat 6. This is a characteristic curve which, with the recovery, where the line is moving upwards, it's usually fairly conclusive that that's to do with root activity at a depth that would not normally occur from things like drought or indeed leaking drains or possible other landslip or other factors. The layout, this is a three-dimensional diagram designed to show movement. It's not very convincing, except that its 0.7 is clearly doing something, about 11 and a half to 12 millimetres of movement over the course of a year. I don't think you can see that, it's such tiny figures, it's like a big black marker, but the corner is to the furthest left, as of the diamond shape, so that the corner closest to the tree 2 is that corner, the leftmost point. And the movement isn't very extreme at all there, but nevertheless, as we say, the chart for plasticity does show that 3 out of the 4 samples illustrates the capacity for the soil to shrink, a certain amount of plasticity, which may be partly accounting for the relatively low level of movement. If it was a more plastic soil, an argument might suggest that there would be more level changes. So really, without going on much longer, the essential points have been put across by the submission by the experts, and as my report sets out, I recommend that the application is approved and the tree is felled. But I'm happy to answer questions and hear arguments and deliberations. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Right, members, we do have some speakers on this item. So the first speaker is Christine Burt from the Epping Society. Good evening. Good evening.
Good evening. I'm here to speak on behalf of the Epping Society.
Do remain seated if you prefer. Whichever you prefer to do, it's entirely up to you.
I'm quite happy standing, actually.
Fine,
thank you. So I'm here to speak on behalf of the Epping Society and also the hundreds of people who have signed our petition. Our petition's only been up a week and we've already got over 1,100 signatures on it. So the Epping Society, for those of you who don't know, has been around for about 50 years. and we're committed to preserving the local environment, improving and promoting Epping. We're all volunteers, and we're a charity with about 300 members and many more followers on Facebook. With regards to this application, we strongly oppose to the felling of the tree. This tree is one of a pair, and this is an iconic view as you approach Epping from the north. It predates the flats and is over 150 years old. It shows in a map dated 1862, and it's a healthy tree and it's protected by the TPO. With regards to the substance, the damage is probably already done, and we have no evidence that actually felling the tree will resolve the issues that have appeared. They have got alternative remediation available to them in the terms of root barrier treatment and also underpinning. And both the costs of those are less than the value given to the tree when you use the capital assessment valuation, which is recommended. And that gives the tree a value of over 230,000. It does. The 3 trees in the total application have a value of over $500,000. So we shouldn't be lightly considering removing these trees. They're native to California, and they were brought back as seeds in the 1850s. They're a status symbol for wealthy landowners, and we're very lucky to have quite a few in Epping. And we would hate this tree to be a precedent and put other trees at risk. There's a beautiful avenue of redwoods, for those of you who are interested, at Havering Country Park, which is well worth a visit. Our petition, we've had lots of comments, and we have shared the comments with the chair. So one of them was that why build houses with unsuitable foundations near these trees in the first place? And also, this ancient and rare tree, standing as it does at the entrance to Epping town from the north, has been a fixture in the lives of countless generations of residents of Epping. It is perfectly healthy. It must be saved, and with time and vision, this is perfectly achievable. So I ask you to save this tree for future generations of Epping. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Right, we have the Parish and Town Council. We have Councillor Avey.
Hello.
Oh, sorry, my apologies, he's online. My apologies. Sorry, Councillor Avey, my apologies.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. For those who don't know me, I'm Chair of Epping Town Council's Planning Committee. Can I apologise for not being in the chamber tonight in person due to work pressures, I'm afraid, that were caused with California. The Town Council is committed to protecting and retaining trees within the urban environment of Epping Town. I think this tree, by its age and rarity, should be retained at all costs, not just for the sake of the street scene, but also for the town's environmental heritage. You've heard evidence of the Epping Society of this heritage and public support for the tree's retention and preservation. And may I thank the Epping Society for the enormous amount of work they have done in this regard. Felling, as you've been told by the tree officer, isn't the only option available here. When this building was constructed, the tree was already there. Frankly, it should come as no surprise to the owners that it could, at some point, the tree could affect the structure of the building, and there would be a cost for remedying this. However, other solutions are available aside from felling, including pruning, which I think, according to the report, the applicant has refused to consider, and other, probably more expensive options that could be considered. I think the owners should be required to accept that cost, and I ask you to refuse this application to oblige the owners to investigate these other methods and preserve this glorious and important tree. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Avey. Right, so this application, it's in Epping East, but I would invite any other members of council if there's any contributions anybody wants to make before I open it to ward members. Councillor Whitbread.
Thank you, Chairman. And Chairman, I'm not the ward councillor, but I know if my daughter was here this evening, she'd want me to speak on her behalf to say that this is a tree that deserves protecting. I know she's taken up the issue with the officer previously, and obviously from my point of view, it's a tree that's been there throughout my life, and it is, as it's been described, an iconic piece of the street scene within Epping. And it seems to me, when you have a tree that doesn't need to be destroyed, and there are alternative solutions, then we should be seeking to do that. So I hope members of your committee tonight will really consider very seriously the need to actually retain this tree, and for the landowners to actually find a solution that's required for the properties. After all, the tree was there first, the properties came second. The fact that their foundations aren't strong enough is something for the actual freeholders to resolve. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Have we got any ward members? Thank you. Councillor Whitehouse.
Thank you. Yeah, and thank you to Ms Hellier for the thorough report. We do from time to time have to consider trees at this committee or at planning committees. It's rarely we discuss a tree that's in quite such a prominent position or of such quality. I mean, there's various ways you can assess trees. You can think of the size and the height of the tree, and this is a very sizable and a very tall tree. You can think about the location of the tree. You know, is it an area where it can be widely seen and to the benefit of lots of people? And clearly, this is not a tree hidden away in a forest or hidden away at the bottom of the back garden. It's visible from a main road by thousands of people each day, most of them moving fairly slowly. And it's in decent condition, and it can be expected to continue in its position for many, many years to come. It's not one of these positions when essentially you're just accelerating the inevitable and cutting down a tree which is already on its last legs. I mean, like art, you can't really put a value on intangible things like trees, but as was mentioned, the CAVET methodology is a way of trying to do that. And as the report shows, the tree scores very highly in almost all the different factors that contribute to that. I mean, there are conditions that are suggested should the tree be felled, but I don't think they really mitigate the damage done by losing this tree. You're losing a very old and well-established tree with many lives to come, with a tree that's much younger, much smaller, and doesn't have the same benefit to the immunity of the area and the immunity of local residents. And as we've heard and as we've read in the report, there are alternatives that exist, whether pruning or root barriers or whatever. And although the cost may seem substantial, when you set that against the sort of per annum cost with the potential lifespan of the tree to come, that, I think by any calculation is a relatively small cost per year. So I'd very much encourage members to vote against the recommendation they've got tonight and in favour of retaining the tree. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Whitehouse. Members, it is going to be opened for discussion. I think this is clearly a very emotional application, and I think we've had an excellent report. Thank you very much to Robert Hellier and indeed members' opinions as well. I think this is the first time I've ever seen a recommendation from an officer prefaced by the word regrettably. And I think that does really reflect the dilemmas that we have here. But I would now like to open up the discussion to members. Councillor Williamson.
Thank you, Chair. Regret is probably an understatement. I don't think there's anybody in this chamber that actually wants to see this tree go. I think if it was a danger to life, then we have a duty to take the tree down. It isn't a danger to life, it's a danger to a property that was built against it when it was probably 120 years old at that point. I think the owner has some responsibility when there are TPO trees on their side, on their land, and that doesn't seem to have happened. Was it pendulous lateral or something? I think I'm learning something new every day. The tree obviously needs some sort of work to just day-to-day or year-to-year maintenance, and that doesn't seem to be happening. I take on board Epping Town Council's view, but the liability sits with us and not them. It's fine for them to say it should stay, but they don't have the liability if we go down that route. My personal view is that, is there any possibility of deferring this to pursue even further the pruning? The owner must now be aware of the swell of objection against the felling of this tree if they're following the debate and seeing what's online and what's going on. Maybe a deferment for one last chance to get some pruning done on this tree may possibly be a way forward. Thank you. Just one final thing. Maybe they're going to rename the block, instead of the firs, they're going to call it the stumps.
Councillor Dadd.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. There's 2 points I'd like to raise, and that is looking at the property that is having the subsidence problems. It is rather tired looking. It does look to me from the outside that there is a lot of maintenance work to be done anyway with that. But I question that 1,100 millimetre depth for, this is in the reports here, for their foundations. I don't think, though I'm not a surveyor, I would have thought in clay soil that would not be permitted by building regs these days. And in my opinion, it was going to be inevitable that there's going to be some sort of subsidence, knowing that the tree was an established tree when it was built there. The other thing is in the report by MWA, they do say, based on additional information now available, we recommend the removal of T1, which I think has already gone, T2 and T3, and the reduction of T4. Now, is this the start of, well, the next thing we're going to say that hasn't resolved the situation, we want the next tree put down? I really feel that clay soil, when we've had very dry summers, and a lot of shrinkage from that perspective anyway, with such shallow foundations for a 3-storey building, you're bound to have subsidence anyway, whether the tree is there or not. And I think we should consider that very carefully before we decide to remove a tree which can't be replaced at all. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Amos.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I obviously very carefully read the report from the tree officer, and I don't envy him in this situation, because as you've said, this causes a great deal of emotion. I have to say I'm not an architect, I'm not a builder, I'm not a tree expert, but I would have thought if I was building those flats all those years ago, it would have occurred to me that I'm building near mature trees. There's always a problem of tree root spread, and I would have put some sort of root barrier down there, but that's where we are. But I also noticed that 10 years ago, a similar application was made, which was then withdrawn. And I question why, if there was a problem then, why wasn't some action taken again to limit the root spread? Even if the tree's taken down, it seems to me you've got to do something to stabilise the building. It's got to be underpinned, or something has got to be done. So there's going to be some expenditure anyway. It is an iconic tree. It's very much part of the landscape as you're leaving and entering Epping. And I think certainly there should be other measures looked at to see whether this really is necessary. I wouldn't be minded to vote in favour of having it failed at this juncture. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Amos. Councillor Adkani. Sorry.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just going to look at the evidence based on what was present, and also I deal with very complicated structures and foundation in the City of London, so it's based on some technical knowledge on the evidence provided. So looking at the evidence, basically, I think the way that it's been monitored, it actually shows that, going back to what was pointed out, based on 8 years ago, having some evidence of basically movement up to now, there should have been some. I've actually went to see the building. I could not see any sort of external cracks on the bricks, which I would have expected if that was continuous. So the duration that this monitor has been taken, from what I've seen, the actual movement is closer to the 3.4 than 3.2. So whether you say that this is due to 3.4 or 2, that's not conclusive. So in fact, the actual monitoring doesn't give conclusive evidence that is 3.2. So after this, you might say you need to cut 3.4. But even the magnitude of the movements, so the accuracy of the survey is 2 mil. So where it's closest to the 3.2 is 5 mil plus or minus. So this monitoring is absolutely not conclusive to the fact that 3.2 is causing this. So I'm just, this is my technical hat putting on, apart from the fact that, to actually have the evidence for this tree to come down. Structurally, just because it's a concrete frame, in my mind, I don't think that is enough evidence, because even before it would have been a superficial cracks, because otherwise, if it was a structure, it would have continued in the last 8 years. So for me, there is not enough evidence to show that this is due to this, and specifically to 3.2. So I'm just, for that reason, I'm not going to vote for this. And I think what I would effective for projects of similar type, at least another year of monitoring, 2 years. And then if there is very evidence that this is exact from this year, and have more trial pits. You can't just cut a tree that just randomly say this is causing this. And looking at I couldn't go to the site because I wasn't invited, so I went outside. From what I've seen, those cracks, yes, it seems to be some foundation, but the one from the tile, absolutely, I cannot see to be caused by the settlement of the tree. So this is, for this reason, I would vote absolutely against this, because there's not enough evidence from my point of view. So just wanted to.
Thank you. Councillor Matthews.
Thank you, Madam Chair. If I may, I've got some questions for the officer, just notes I've taken, if we could answer them one by one, please. Just for absolute clarity on this. So the testing that has been done and the root samples that have been taken below the foundations, we haven't got 100% certainty that they come from T2. Is that correct, my understanding of that?
No, that's correct. It's not 100%. It's something I gave some detailed answers to one of the councillors, Morris. This, I don't disagree at all with Councillor Ardakani's points, that more trial pits would have been much more evidentially powerful. The trial pit was dug at the corner of the property, which is significantly closer to T2 than T4. The movement tends to suggest T4. So there's a sort of a disconnect. The roots are clearly identified, 7 roots in total, with starch, so they're live roots at depths of up to down as far as 2.6 metres. So they are well beneath footings. But the argument that I put to the agent to express my confusion, that on the one hand we have roots of a redwood, not a cedar. I wanted to know categorically which of those two trees those roots came from. They weren't prepared to do DNA testing or anything advanced. They simply said that the likelihood that T2 at 10 metres from the corner of the building where the borehole was dug, was drilled, those would be the roots, as opposed to, I haven't measured, but it was 17.5 plus 8 metres along. I think the building's 8 metres. So, yeah, that would have been 25 metres. Sequoias aren't renowned for very wide-spreading roots, unlike willows and oaks and things, and poplar. They're generally deep-rooted. So, in answer to your question, there isn't 100% certainty that those roots, while they're redwood, were definitely T2, but again, the probability and the way it was argued was that it's clearly likely to be from T2 at 10 metres rather than from T4, which would have been over 25 metres away. But it doesn't, agreeably, that corner does not seem to be moving very much. That might be to do with the lower level of plasticity in the soil. And I don't want to drag on all about that, but there is, the damage is historical and has been recurring. But that, I'm afraid, yes, the best I can offer you in that response.
Thank you for that comprehensive answer. My next point, just for absolute clarity on each of these points, we're talking about 11.5 to 12 mil of movement, and that movement is going down and coming back up seasonally. Okay, that's fine. And then next point of clarity, in terms of the soil type, we're saying it is typical of this soil type to have shrinkage and expansion.
Yeah.
Okay. And my final point on this tree is 150 years old, somewhere approximately. What is the typical life expectancy of a tree of this nature?
In Britain, it's difficult to say how long they will live for, because they were introduced, as was described by the representative of the Epping Society several hundred years ago. Usually, I'm not entirely sure it was as a result of the victory at Waterloo, but it was around those sort of times. So these are still, I won't necessarily say juvenile trees, but as I say, in their natural, native environment on the west coast of America, 1,000 years plus is not uncommon, and heights in excess of 80 metres. So, yeah, the lifespan of this tree, like a lot of the trees you see all over, statuesque, they could naturally live, I would imagine, as long as an oak tree. Unfortunately, they suffer from things like lightning strike, and they can suffer from wind due to they're usually isolated and height. Yeah, it's an open book at the moment as far as getting a long-term idea of their lifespan.
Thank you again for that answer. So just to summarise my point, or the points I've gained from that, we don't know that the roots belong to this tree. We don't know this tree is actually causing the damage. Movement is typical of these soils. There's options available to the land owner or the property owner in terms of root barriers or underpinning, etc., etc. And considering all of that, we're being asked this evening to chop down a tree that's 150 years into a potential 1,000-year lifespan, which is going to be here far before any of these buildings are, far longer than any of these buildings are standing, far longer than any of us are going to be around. So I really can't see how this has got to the position of being asked to remove this. And we've heard brilliant contributions this evening on the emotional side of it. I came here this evening very much with the mindset to avoid the emotion and just look at the detail. And I thank you very much for your report and the advice you've given this evening, or the contribution you've given this evening on the actual detail. And looking at the detail itself, I can't see any reason to support this whatsoever. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Lee.
Thank you, Chairman. I think most people have said everything. But me just being a country girl, and I'm sure Tim could back me up, clay, when it's wet, just washes away, and then when it's dry, it turns to powder. Now, listening to the report, there's clay in this soil, so that's why, whatever that word is he was using, that's changed the soil, is happening because we've had so much rain, so the clay will wash away, And then when it's so dry, what's left turns to powder. So, of course, it's going to affect this building. And maybe in the future, with all the planning that's going on, we'll look to not build properties so near mature trees. So I wouldn't agree for the tree to be cut down. And then, of course, people are saying about trimming it here and there, but I think when you start trimming trees, they seem to grow even faster. Like when you cut your hair, it seems to grow much quicker. So I wouldn't even say about that. But I can't support it being cut down. Not emotionally wise, but I just think it's not a good enough excuse, because the property that's there is liable to, you know, fall down in the end before the tree.
Thank you.
Sorry, Councillor Morris, did you want to?
I think I can add my comments very quickly. I did get some very good information from the planning officer, Robin. Yeah, I think basically it's the engineering report recommends that they cut down T1, T2, T3. It's not very clear if the one what they've applied to cut down is actually going to cause a problem. So if you cut that down, there's still a problem. Then they'll want all the others cut down eventually. And I just don't think it's right to cut down a tree like this because it might be the cause. I mean, if it's just might be the cause, well, I think we should not approve it and look for other possible options that we can follow to manage damage to the building, of which many have been discussed today.
Thank you. Thank you. Did you want to speak?
Just thank you.
Councillor Kaufman.
So I think the only thing I will just quickly add, which is just to be brief and let us just move along, is that from my inspection of the building, it looks pretty apparent that the building has had an additional storey put on it. And of course, that additional storey would have been put on top of the original foundations, which, if they weren't sufficient at the time the building was built, you know, it's just going to exacerbate the issue. And further, then, if we were to approve the felling of the tree, and we agreed that the trees would be replaced with suitable trees, I don't know where anyone's going to find a 150-year-old tree from. I'm sure they may exist somewhere, but the person that has the 150-year-old tree might object to it going. Is what are the replacement trees going to do to the building that is already substandard? I mean, surely you don't, if someone's got a sore leg, you don't just cut it off and hope they're going to grow a new one. You might try and fix the problem. And that's where we do have to have some further discussions with the landowner and just consider some additional options in my view.
Thank you. Councillor Al-Khani.
Just wanted to check why it wasn't mentioned that the additional storey was put on the building, because that's a substantial change on the load path. So basically, you go on site visit and you think that this is substantial change on the load path and it could affect the foundation. It should have been pointed out as important fact in this discussion. This is a very important point, and we need to monitor. Even if it's later, there's any external, it takes 1 or 2 years of monitoring before you make that decision. But that's the important fact, it wasn't included in the report.
Thank you. So. Thank you. Members, I'm mindful that Councillor Williamson, at the beginning of the discussion, did think about and put forward an idea that we might be able to defer this to allow further negotiations to actually with the landowner as to whether there is, if I could just turn to the tree officer to actually further comments on that as a possibility or not.
Well, yes, the deferral would still potentially add to costs if the final conclusion was that there was substantial evidence that says this tree is a major contribution to the damage. Just in answer to Councillor Ardekani's point, I wasn't actually aware prior to the site visit that there was an additional storey. They, you know, aren't bound to add that to their information, but yet it has a very strong bearing, literally, on the matter. The recent experience I've had of deferral does, on the one hand, yes, expose the council to on costs if further damage gets worse and we've elected to put the case back. If they chose to appeal and it was found that, you know, we had enough information that, again, as I said, in response to Councillor Matthews' point, it's a low bar. The balance of probabilities doesn't require them to be as diligent as obviously I would like them to be, or any of us would like them to be, with a tree of this value. But certainly this would trigger an approach from me, but to the agent, to ask for further negotiations. They might well be in a position to say, we've done enough, and if you need more, if you need to have more boreholes, if you need to get more details of verticality or additional technical information, that will be for the council to fund. We're not willing to put any more money into this. Or, as in the case of the veteran oak tree in Wellfields, a decision, an instruction came back from the client, the insurance company, to the agent to withdraw the application and pursue a pruning option. I agree that pruning is not going to be the long-term answer here. Such heavy pruning would have to be repetitive, as with haircuts and stuff. So it would diminish the tree's appearance. It would then also be an ongoing burden that would only work if it was, repeated regularly. Root barrier discussions. There are local specialists, and I've spoken with local specialists about different designs potentially for root barriers. Their greatest concern would be that the tree officer wouldn't allow the root damage that would incur on the installation of, for example, sheet pile, rather than mass concreting or trenching. Given the situation, I would be prepared to risk some level of root severance to fully protect the building. And as I said at my introduction, the quality of the building, in the 1960s, the awareness of subsidence was fairly rudimentary, and it wasn't until big drought years in the 70s that everyone woke up to the impact that shrinkable clay can have on footings that were often even less than a metre. So, long answer, I'm afraid, but yeah, deferral would be an opportunity, at the same time potential for additional costs to be levied against the council. But as we've all seen, everyone's in favour of the value of the tree, so that's how it would play out, I think.
Thank you. Councillor Matthews.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I thank the officer for giving us the comprehensive answer there. It's not often I find myself disagreeing with my colleague, Councillor Williamson, but on this one, and I know, and I'll appreciate the fact that he made the comment at the start of the debate, but given the quality of the debate we've had this evening, the contributions from the public, from non-committee members and from committee members, I don't see any reason why we don't make a decision on this tonight. I would not want to see this deferred under any circumstances. So I think we should move to a vote on this. Thank you.
I totally understand. Councillor Williamson.
Yeah, I totally agree with Councillor Matthews on this. I would hate to see the tree go, and I was just exploring other possibilities at that time, and I think we've explored it to death.
Thank you. Right, in that case, members, I am going to move this to the vote. We have to vote on the recommendation that is in front of us. So the recommendation is to approve the felling of the tree with condition. All those in favour of felling, please show.
Nil, Chairman.
All those against?
Unanimous. Unanimous, Chairman.
Thank you. In that case, we have not voted for the tree to be felled. Have I got any other proposals for members, please? Okay, I've just been told I've done things slightly out of order. I'm very sorry, members, hence the pause. We do need to make clear the reasons for refusal. Councillor Matthews, can I come to you initially to start the ball rolling on some clear reasons for refusal?
Reasons for refusal, Madam Chairman, is there isn't sufficient evidence to overwrite the TPO that's on the tree. I don't think it needs any more than that. Thank you.
Right. Any further reasons that people feel we should include in that? Councillor Amos.
No, sorry.
Sorry, no. Okay.
I was just seconding Councillor Matthews.
Right. Do we need any further in terms of the importance of it as a tree to the, or would that be?
The amenity value would be the key reason. I think there's the lack of justification in terms of technical information is insufficient in terms of a refusal. It would be that the amenity value outweighs the less than convincing level of data. So it's essentially the value of the tree and all that is associated with that, and its potential loss is the weight of the argument. So we have to acknowledge that there is technical data that does satisfy to a balance of probabilities level, but because of the prominence, the age, the size, and all the points that have been raised in favour of the tree, that isn't enough, and that we would word it along those lines. Off the top of my head, anyway.
Microphone. Councillor
Whitehouse has indicated he'd like to speak. It's at your discretion.
Yes, no, absolutely. Councillor Whitehouse.
Well, actually, Mr. Hellier said pretty much what I was going to say. I think it is, the outstanding value of the tree outweighs the lack of justification.
Thank you. Councillor Dadd.
Thank you. I don't think we should. I agree about the outstanding value of the tree, but I don't think that we should say that there is evidence of probability. I think we should stick with Councillor Matthews' point that there is insufficient data that's convincing that it's T2 causing all the subsidence, or words to that effect.
And Councillor Lee.
Thank you, Chairman. If we cut the tree down, then in 5 years' time, they find that the ground underneath has moved more and it's dried and disappeared because of all the extra rain with the change in the environment and all this extra bright sunlight, it's far too late then, because that's exactly what's going to happen. The more rain, the clay's going to wash away. More sunshine, it's going to turn to powder. So I don't agree with it being cut down, and I don't mind what reason you use.
I was going to say, no, it's absolutely, no, we haven't, I was going to say, we've agreed that it shouldn't be cut down, but what is important is that we are looking at reasons. Councillor Bedford.
Thank you, Chairman.
Sorry, can I just hold 1 minute?
You need to get this moved to a motion if the planning reasons are.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chairman. Taking on board everything that's been said tonight, and I agree that the tree is important, but also it's important in the setting of the other trees that are close to it. So putting together some words, it's the setting of the tree in its community, its heritage, and its prominent setting of the tree. Its removal will be detrimental to the setting of the tree, stroke trees, on the approach of entry to and from Epping.
Was that tie in?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think we've given enough information, so I think we've between us we've actually pulled together some very clear reasons for not agreeing. Now, the situation we're in now is that we've voted not to grant it. I think we now need a proposal and a seconder to refuse it with these clear conditions. Councillor Matthews.
I'm happy to propose that we refuse this application on the basis of the amenity value outweighs the loss of the tree, there's lack of sufficient evidence, and with regards to the trees setting amongst the other trees as mentioned.
Yeah, no, I think that sums it up nicely. Okay, I was going to say loads of seconds. It's Councillor Williamson to second that. Okay, members, all those in favour of that proposal, proposed by Councillor Matthews, seconded by Councillor Williamson, that we actually refuse the planning application for those reasons. Please show.
Unanimous, Chairman.
Thank you. So that application has been refused. Thank you.
Chairman, I'm going to take a swift exit.
Thank you. Members, we are now moving back to item 7. This is EPF 1773/23, 37 to 41 Townmead Road, Waltham Abbey, with an officer recommendation to approve with conditions. This is in Waltham Abbey Ward, West Ward. Okay, and we have, and it is Suki who is presenting this item. Hello, Suki.
Thank you, Chairman. Hello. Can you see my screen and can you hear me?
Yes, we have it, and yes, we can hear you. Thank you.
Thank you. This application relates to land at the rear of 37 to 41 Townmead Road. It's the garden area to the rear of the site. This slide shows a location plan and an aerial photo. The garage building shown here is proposed to be demolished. The surrounding character is residential. Members should note a correction to the description of the site. The red line has been amended to exclude the 41 Townmead Road, the bungalow, and which is no longer part of the application, and instead it's just the garden area, orchard area. This application is before committee since more than 5 objections have been received. The concerns raised are laid out on pages 17 and 18 of the agenda. They include overdevelopment, loss of privacy, overbearing, harm to highway safety, lack of parking, noise and disturbance, and harm to wildlife. The top photo is an aerial view of the site, and the bottom photo is a view of the front of 37 to 39 Townmead Road and the garden access, which is there. More photos. This is the top left is the front entrance of the site. The top middle photo is a view of the rear of property from the rear within Sewardstone Road from the site. The top right is a view of Orchard Gardens from the site. The bottom left is a photo of the rear elevation of 37 Townmead Road, which is positioned perpendicular to the proposal. The bottom middle photo is a view of 35 Townmead from the site, and the bottom right is 41 Townmead Road. You can see the properties within Orchard Gardens there. This slide shows the existing and proposed site plans. Permission is sought for the demolition of existing outbuilding and the construction of 5 terraced houses. Chalet bungalows with associated shared surface parking and adjusted access from Townmead Road. You can see the line of trees in the centre of the site. These trees will be removed and replaced with housing. The 2 trees closest to the boundary with 35 Townmead Road will be retained. Tree conditions will ensure that the new trees planted are of equal qualities. The amenity space provided for each unit ranges between 72 square metres and 213 square metres per unit. This slide shows the plans and elevations of the proposed units. They have an eaves height of 3 metres and a ridge height of 6.5 metres. They include dormer projections. Materials include off-white render, concrete grade flat tiles, artificial timber cladding, UPVC windows and doors. These units are 3 bedroom, so they have an internal size of 102 square metres. The units meet national space standards and are adaptable and accessible, and include the 2nd bedroom on the ground floor. The rear elevation of the proposal is 21.5 metres away from the rear elevations of properties on Sewardstone Road, about 15.8 metres away from the properties at Orchard Gardens, and 18.6 metres from the existing bungalow. This slide shows you a landscape plan. You can see the position of the new trees on the edges of the site. And a native hedge will help screen the development from neighbouring properties and Sewardstone Road. Shrubs and climbers are also proposed in the public areas. The Highway Authority has raised no objection in regard to parking or highway safety. This slide shows a CGI image of what the proposal would look like once built. You can see the planting on the boundary adjoining Orchard Gardens. The proposal will provide accessible housing in a sustainable location. The impact on neighbours will not be excessive, and the proposal provides sufficient parking to meet its needs. It's for these reasons that the proposal has an officer recommendation for approval subject to conditions and a Section 106 contributions to mitigate the impact of the development on the FSAC. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you. Right, members, we do have one registered speaker on this application, Ariadna Aston, the applicant's agent. Good evening.
Good evening. The scheme is for 5 new dwellings with associated access and parking. The applicant has worked hard with the council over the last 12 months to agree an acceptable scheme that is appropriate to its context and provides new housing in a sustainable location. The site is within walking distance of the bus and train station, and local facilities are a short distance away, reducing the need for car movements. During the application, the number of units and overall scale has been reduced. The proposed materiality is reflective of materials found in the surrounding streets, with contemporary features around the dormers. The proposal is for a terrace of 3-bedroom shallow bungalows to create a total of 5 new dwellings. The condensed terrace form with room in roof has minimised the proposed mass on the site and avoids any overlooking or overshadowing. The screening to the north will be maintained with 2 existing trees retained as part of the proposal. Additional planting and trees are proposed to create an attractive setting, private gardens and support biodiversity. The scheme provides M42 compliant units which allow residents to stay in their homes if they have mobility difficulties now or in the future with a ground floor bedroom and bathroom. The proposed access has been deemed acceptable by highways with the vision displays provided. The refuse collection point allows easy drop-off by residents and collection by refuse workers, and a fire engine can also access and turn within the site. Neighbours have raised concerns about parking during the application. Firstly, the scheme has been reduced in scale from 7 to 5 units, which has removed the split of the existing bungalow at number 41 and the conversion of its front garden into a drive to both properties. This has reduced the number of parking spaces required for the scheme and maintains the existing Townmead Road frontage in front of the bungalow, with only access to the north of the bungalow widened. The road will still allow on-street parking by residents, effectively maintaining the status quo in terms of opportunity to park on the street. Secondly, neighbours have raised concerns regarding parking increasing along Townmead Road due to permits being enforced on nearby streets. The proposal will not increase parking along Townmead Road, as it provides parking on-site in accordance with local standards for resident and visitor spaces. In order to assist with parking to the surrounding area, the 2 visitor spaces on site are to be made available for number 39, which does not currently benefit from any parking spaces. A space has also been provided for each of the flats at 37 and 37A, which do not currently have parking, representing a net gain of 3 spaces available along Townmead Road. Residents have raised questions about the access to provide parking for 37 and 37A. This is an existing access. It is currently clear no parking is permitted in front of the gate, with road markings and a sign on the gate showing the words no parking. As a result, it is suitable to use as access for these spaces. The application seeks to provide additional housing stock in a sustainable location, and it is hoped the committee agree with the case officer and support the application. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Any other non-committee members who want to say anything before we move to discussion? Okay, and we do not have any ward councillors. So, members, we do have a recommendation to approve. Any comments, please? Councillor Lee.
Thank you, Chairman. I couldn't see that any of these little bungalows have got gardens other than a little shared space at the back. I've been down there because I do live in Waltham Abbey. And reading that the size of these little internal things are 102 square metres, that doesn't sound much bigger than the cabin on the boat. But I think they're going to be very tiny. And, all right, it says 2 parking spaces for each. I still find it hard to see that they're going to get 5 bungalows in there, because I've actually been down there and it doesn't look big enough to me. And no gardens. Just a shared bit of green at the back sounds a bit strange.
Thank you. Councillor Amos.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I have, of course, read the report, and I note the planning officer's response to the objections, which I think are well made. I notice that the parish council has no objection to this particular proposal, and I think it is very important that we have a development of this site, of this type in the district. There are very few developments where we've got ground floor accommodation, ground floor bedrooms with ensuite, which are needed by particularly disabled and elderly people. We have very little of that in the district, and I am firmly of the opinion that we should support this recommendation of the planning officer.
Thank you very much indeed. Councillor Dadd.
I downloaded some of the things online, and my understanding was that the chalet bungalows do have separate gardens. Can we have that clarified, please?
Yes. Suki, could you perhaps clarify that for us?
Yes, I can. Yes, they have individual gardens, rear gardens, and they range between inside 72 square metres to 213 square metres. I'll just share my screen and just show you the slide just to reiterate that point. Just go backwards, sorry. Shows the best one is this one. So the end one, because it's a PowerPoint, the writing is a bit unclear. So I think it's 213. The Unit 2 is 72 square metres. Unit 3 is 72 square metres. Unit 4 is 72 square metres. And Unit 5 is 94 square metres. Given the urban location and policy DM10 not providing a specific area of an acceptable size of garden and the sustainable location, that level of garden was on balance considered acceptable.
Thank you. Back to Councillor Dadd, then I'll come back to Councillor Williams.
Sorry, my other question was, generally I'm in favour of this, but I think it's a pity that when you go in there, it's going to be dominated by car parking. From that perspective, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Williamson.
Thank you, Chair. I think there are many people these days that would be very happy with a small garden, and the large gardens need a lot of looking after. I can see no reason on planning reasons to object to this. I was just wondering whether we should or could remove permitted development rights for the future, especially with the extra stories going on, whether that would be sensible.
Thank you. Suki, could you possibly comment on that? Thank you.
Yes. Yes, I think there is a condition which removes permitted development rights, but I will just check whether it's got AA included in it. Just give a second. But should it not have AA, I will make sure that class is included within that condition.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's just a question from me. If that's
Yeah,
right.
Councillor Kaufmann.
Yes, thank you, Chair. So only two questions. One was from the site plan. Can we just clarify that the actual entrance road in, that the applicant is in control of both of the visibility displays? So the first property that you have to turn, I think it would be turn right, that there's no way that visibility can be blocked with planting or a wall of some description. Is that possible?
So I'll just bring it up again, sorry.
While she's looking for that, my other question was relating to the famous question of bins. Is there sufficient capacity in the bin store for the famous rumoured third bin?
So there's storage for bins there, and they would have storage in their back gardens as well. And then, so it would be just on the day of collection that they could put the space within this. If you can see my cursor, I'll just use my pointer, laser pointer. Yeah, so this is where the bin stores would be, and they meet standards. The Unit 1 has its own bin store location, and Unit 5 could also store it within their side passage as well. So that bin store would be adequate. These visibility displays were considered by the Highway Authority to be adequate. They felt that they had adequate visibility and had control of it. Bearing in mind that this property here, 37 to 39 Town Mead Road, is owned by the applicant.
Thank you. Sorry, Councillor Kaufmann.
Right. So yes, but that's an interesting point to raise, though, that they are the owner at the moment, but down the line, when, you know, as we all do, things come to an end and that is sold on, and a new person owns that, and the houses have all been sold off. I suppose you might have a ground rent situation of some description where someone will have to own the boundaries, and you know, in the event that someone plants out the front garden at number 41. Alongside that access road, what would happen? I just think we need to have some sort of clarity there that in perpetuity there's not going to be a situation where someone will come flying out of this development. I'm minded to agree with everything that's been recommended, but that's just one point that I think we need a little bit of detail on, just for safety.
I think if we're not careful with moving beyond the premise of a planning application. Okay. All right. The agents are indicated to speak, so yes, but please keep it as brief as possible.
Of course, I was just trying to answer the question. Thank you. I imagine the development, as it's a shared surface, will be managed under a management company, and you can see the strips of where the visibility displays are indicated. They would no doubt be covered within their ownership to maintain them as clear visibility displays for the access.
Lovely. Okay. Thank you very much indeed for clarifying that. Are we happy? All right. Councillor Matthews.
Thank you, Madam Chair. On balance, I support the the scheme. I like what Councillor Amos has already highlighted. The need for a scheme like this is welcome in the district. But as Councillor Williams has already correctly pointed out, I would like to see the restriction of permitted development, because if we support this based on the scheme that is there now, I would be mightily disappointed to in the future then see it turned into 5 houses that would not support the purpose of those buildings at the moment.
The planning officer did say that she would ensure that that was included, yes.
And following previous discussions this evening, can we please ensure that the correct foundations are put in next to the trees and the... Thank you.
And finally, Councillor Lee.
Thank you, Chairman. It's not very clear to me about the storage for the bins, because at the moment we all have to have 2 bins per house, possibly going to have 3. Now, this is not a very big space, and I know just now they said about the bin storage is right over on that side, but it doesn't look very big considering if there's 5 houses there should be 10 bins, because surely for bungalows they're not going to be just giant bins like that be for a flat. So I need that clarified. Have they got their own bins? And it doesn't look like there's enough space to me that there's 10, could be 10 bins there.
No, thank you. I think the planning officer, Suki, did actually explain that there was sufficient room for the bins, both in the allocated space and each residence's own space. So I think that has actually been covered, that there is sufficient space for the bins.
For the 10 now.
I think Suki might just come in. Thank you.
Sorry, I just want to come back with Councillor Williamson first. So condition 15 does include the removal of permitted development rights for classes A, B, D, E of Part 1 of Schedule 2 of the Permitted Development Act. Sorry. So that issue has been already included and covered. With regard to the bins, there is sufficient space for the homes provided on site, and they also have space within their own units. So it would be more than adequate for their needs.
Thank you. Right, members, I'd like to move this to the vote. We have a recommendation that planning permission is granted with conditions and, of course, subject to the Section 106 legal agreement. All those in favour of granting, please show.
Unanimous, Chairman.
Thank you. In that case, that application has been granted. Right, we now move on to item 8, and this is where I'm just going to leave the chair and sit on the non-committee members' side. Prior to that, though, if I could, we do need to propose, because both myself and Councillor Kaufman will be not being part of this discussion, I would like to propose that Councillor Williamson would, if he would be happy, and if other members are happy for Councillor Williamson to take the chair for the meeting. Those agreed? Are we all happy? And also, I would like to suggest that Councillor Adekani, if he becomes vice chair for this item. Are we all happy? In that case, taking the wrong one with me.
I'm just going to drop you You go that. Go.
Do-si-do.
Okay, Councillor Wilson. There's the speakers.
Thank you very much.
There's the order.
Yep.
And that's your group chief required.
Thank you very much. Thank you, members. The next application is EPF 064124, the Top Oak Public House, Oak Hill Road, Stapleford Abbots. The officers.
Chairman, could I just ask you to confirm for the camera and anybody in the committee that Councillor Allgood is substituting on this item.
Thank you. Okay. Can we have the officer's report, please?
Thank you, Councillor. Thank you, Chairman. Sorry. The application relates to the addition of 5 flats which are housed within a new build structure. The application is before committee since members of the East Area Planning Committee deferred the application for a member site visit. The visit took place on Monday gone. Members did request that a highway officer also be present at the visit. However, the highway officer was unable to attend due to working part-time and therefore was unavailable on that day. However, she did advise that the reasons for the highway recommendation were straightforward and felt that attendance at a site visit was not required on this occasion. Objections were received from the Parish Council and neighbours. The concerns raised are listed on pages 35 to 37 of the agenda. Apologies to the members of the former East Area Planning Committee. I will be repeating my presentation as other members of this committee haven't seen it. The application is located on the northwestern side of Oak Hill and the western side of Abbott's Way. It's currently in use as a public house, and the rear garden of the property on Bishop's Brow, which is also owned by the applicant. This slide shows aerial views of the site, and the top left corner is a photograph of the rear garden within the red line of the site for Bishop's Brow. You can see that the unlawful building shown in the other aerial photos has been removed. The surrounding area is residential in character. This plan shows the existing site and roof plans. This slide shows the existing basement plan, which will not change, the existing ground floor and the first floor. The proposal will result in the removal of 216 square metres of modern unsympathetic extensions. These extensions here. This slide shows the existing elevations, and you can see the conservatory which will be removed. This slide shows the proposed site plan. 11 car parking spaces are proposed for future residents within the land that is currently the rear garden of Bishop's Brow, and 1 mobility space at the front of the site. 20 will be retained for use by the pub. See here. The beer garden will be located to the south-east corner of the site. You can see 74 square metres of communal garden to the northeast of the pub, and smaller private gardens for the ground floor flats to the west. The car park adjoins 6 the Abbots to the northeast, and Mountford to the northwest. The pub car park is an existing one and is surrounded by residential neighbours. Condition 11 on page 63 of the agenda recommends that its use is controlled through approval of a management plan to ensure that neighbouring residents are not excessively affected over and above the existing situation. This slide shows the ground floor layout of the building. Unit 1 will provide a 1-bedroom unit which is wheelchair accessible. Unit 2 is 2-bedroom and will be attached by a bathroom to the circulation space which leads into the first floor residential units over the pub. The unit 3 is a 2-bedroom unit. This slide shows the first floor Unit 4 is 2-bedroom. Unit 5 is 2-bedroom. And this unit is an existing unit over the pub. The front proposed extension is in a similar position to that of the existing restaurant extension, but then extends a further 15.3 metres northwest into the site at ground floor level. The first floor is set 8.6 metres back from the ground floor front elevation, and then extends a further 24 metres. Whilst the north elevation will be explored by the development, the removal of the modern extensions, the splayed position of the extension and the first floor setback of the proposal will ensure that the presence of the building is still read. The exterior finishes of the extension containing the residential accommodation would include dental, handmade brick courses, exposed timber trusses, sprung window and doors, ship-lapped timber, slates and clay pan tiles. These are high-quality materials and detail which will have a positive impact on the character and appearance of the area. The proposal will facilitate the renovation of the exterior of the existing pub building. All modern-day additions will be stripped away, like for instance the soil pipes and alarm boxes, and then they will all become internal. The facades and roof will be carefully restored and upgraded. The proposed extension to the pub will be in a style in keeping with the main pub building. The proposal will also result in the existing pub being renovated, including the pub roof. In addition, the tiles on the roof will match the existing pub and timber painted doors are also proposed. This slide shows an artist's impression of the site as proposed. The top one is a perspective from Abbott's Way, and the bottom one is a southwestern perspective from Oak Hill. Officers believe the proposal will provide 5 new units of accommodation outside of the Greenbelt. Impact on neighbouring amenity and highway safety is not excessive. Approval is therefore recommended subject to conditions in a Section 106 agreement to mitigate the impact on the FSAC. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. We have 2 speakers, the first of which is Elizabeth Thomas for Stapleford Abbots Parish Council. You have 3 minutes. Thank you.
Okay. Good evening. We, as Stapleford Abbots Parish Council, object to this proposal to build further residential properties in Stapleford Abbots. Our chief objection is overdevelopment on the site and overcrowding in the village. The local plan to the year 2033 details 47 new dwellings in total in the parish. In actual fact, the parish is already well in excess of 150 dwellings approved. This site has been developed very heavily over the last few years, in short with the 13 dwellings of Abbott's Way, and this proposal would create an overdevelopment of both the small site and the confined built-up area as a whole. Ironically, many new build houses in the vicinity have not yet sold and are rented or empty, which suggests that the village does not need any extra buildings. We have further objections. It's out of keeping with the rest of the village. The proposed development is denser than any other in Stapleford Abbots, and its design is very bland and cramped and is not the same aesthetic as the pub building, let alone the settlement's detached and semi-detached housing as a whole. It stated that the flat sizes meet London minimum sizes. We are alarmed to hear this, as they sound like an extremely small scale. Social impact. The Top Oak is central to Stapleford Abbots, literally and figuratively. It is a popular social meeting point and a social and cultural hub for residents and more. The village has very few amenities. The shop only covers basic items and is open just on weekdays, and there's a limited bus service, so this development both burdens and robs the infrastructure. The impact on the pub as a viable business is also a concern. The plans suggest that half of the existing property would become residential from what was a service provider. The proposal reduces the size of the Top Oak as a pub and a restaurant, which we fear would affect its commercial viability and cause it to be closed as a business and social amenity and encourage the site to be put up for residential usage. There are very few commercial businesses in the parish, so the loss of local employment will be very detrimental too. The traffic safety reparking. The reduction in the car park into the pub, there are mooted to be 20 parking spaces for the Top Oaks customers, will result in inadequate provision and encourage parking on Oak Hill Road, which is notorious enough for pavement parking in the neighbourhood already, and we are very concerned that the displaced parking from the pub and visitors would be even worse at busy times like summertime and Christmas. The parking space for the pub is definitely not enough. People rely so heavily on cars in this part of the area, and the parking lot has been whittled down over the years by the 2 other developments in back, which are already attached to the pub. The architect who attended the site visit said the parking now has 11 places for the flats, but we're of the view that this probably would not be enough. What about visitors? And he said that they are placing their numbers on a traffic flow company, but we're sceptical that the desktop exercises carried out by a company of this type may not be wholly drawn from real-life experience. Road safety is a huge, huge issue. Oak Hill Road is a busy road, potentially busier once High House Farm and Oak Hill Green are built. There are serious safety hazards. Entrance exits are on a bend. No way for emergency services and refuse collections to get in, and the noise nuisance and the utilities, there will be a huge strain on them. The drainage, the power cuts, the electricity.
We really need you to sum up.
Oh, I'll sign off now.
Final sentence, please.
Okay, yeah, one sentence. A similar proposal for 6 flats was refused around about this time last year, and we would ask that this application is refused likewise for very much the same reasons as I have outlined here, very sincerely.
Thank you. Turn your microphone on, please. Could you turn your microphone? Thank you. And the second speaker is Scott Kyson, the applicant's agent. Thank you. You also have 3 minutes.
Yes. Thank you, Chair. Good evening, members. I did have a few words I was going to say, which is a bit of a reiteration of what I said when we was at committee a few weeks ago, but I think with view of some of the objections that I've just heard, I'd like to just use my time to address some of those in the first instance. So, we're not looking at the reduction of a community asset here in terms of pub. We've got a pub that's been on the site for 100, 150 years. We're looking to revert the pub back to its historic footprint. The pub is a successful business, but the ancillary restaurant isn't. And the decline over the last 4 years has meant that the financial burden of the restaurant, there's a risk of it being a catalyst of closure of the entire pub. The owner loves running the pub, wants to carry on doing so, but needs investment into the building and the pub to do so. In terms of the building of the flats, the architectural language has followed the historic buildings on the site. There was once I believe it was a Scout building, which was a kind of shed that has been sort of makeshift converted into the restaurant. It's got an unsightly asbestos roof and it's deteriorating. We've followed that architectural language to have this juxtaposition of a kind of a subservient ancillary building to the pub. Now, in that architectural process, we've decided to visually separate that building from the pub where they're currently joining, and in the view that we're kind of giving a restoration to this sort of non-designated heritage asset. So part of the investment into this development is to restore the pub. In terms of parking, any parking issues at the moment are due to Sundays when the restaurant does trade well, and that's visitors that are coming from outside of the village. Once the restaurant is closed and the pub runs, most of the patrons come from the village and come on foot, but there will still be 20 parking spaces for the pub. In terms of the residential amenity standards, I must apologise, that's a typo in our document. It's national standards, not London standards. And the size of the units, they are small scale, and there has been a demand and local community interested in downsizing. One of the units which has access straight onto the road, the only one, which was the cause for the deferral at the last meeting about whether this was safe access. This has been determined as safe access by the highways officer, but you should know the only reason for that unit having direct access to the road is so that it can have a DDA parking space right outside its front door. And then one of the last things I'd like to say is that we are aware that the downsizing, where older people living in the bigger houses in the village, by downsizing to the smaller units and living in a more tight-knit community, this does free up housing for families. I think that's pretty much covered most of the things that I wanted to say, but I'm available to answer any questions on the scheme if you have any. Thank you.
Other members before we go to ward councillors, is there anybody wishes to add anything? Can we go to the ward councillors? We have Councillors Amos, Corky and Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Chairman. I would urge members to take serious consideration over the Parish Council's objection. They are really reflective of the genuine concerns a lot of the residents have over this application. It's well detailed both in the presentation and also the report from page 35 through to 37. So I would wholeheartedly support the Parish Council in their concerns. This site is not identified in the local plan as a site for development, and I feel that we do also need to look towards the local plan to actually protecting the unidentified sites. Now, admittedly, it wasn't identified in the call for sites, no one put it forward, but at the moment Stapleford Abbots have taken a large amount of development beyond that which has been identified in the local plan. And I think this does need some consideration. I do think we need to protect our sites that aren't in the local plan, and I would ask councillors to consider that in making this application decision. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Amos.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm not going to do a me too, but I certainly would urge the committee to look very seriously at the paper that has been prepared and the comments that have been made tonight by the Parish Council, and I also share the views of my fellow ward councillor, Councillor Jones. Thank you.
Thank you. Members of the committee, your chance. Councillor Lee.
If this doesn't go ahead, does that mean the pub's going to shut? But listening to it, the pub's struggling. So they've got to do this to keep it alive. I know that's probably not a planning thing, but it's something I'd be interested to know. Thank you.
I think from the discussion and the applicant's agent, I think the pub is going well, the restaurant is not going so well. So I think I think the pub will continue. Is any other members? Councillor Matthews, then Councillor Dad.
Thank you, Chairman. This is a difficult application that not quite made my mind up on yet. As a member for a boundary ward myself, I'm very passionate about our boundary wards, particularly those on our southern border with the London boroughs and the sprawl of London coming across our border and the overdevelopment within these wards. It's something that I'm very concerned about. I also think the Parish Council have done a fantastic job in presenting their argument, and I'd implore other parish councils to sort of take note on how to present an argument to the council, to the district council, because it provides us with such a great insight to the local knowledge, and that's really what they're there for. However, saying that, we do have to look at this application in its own merit and what planning and whether it's complying with the planning constraints or not. And I am yet to see a reason where it doesn't comply. But as I say, I am concerned about the overdevelopment, so I'll be interested to see what other members' thoughts are on this.
Councillor Dad, then.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, I also reiterate what Councillor Matthews has said, but I'm actually interested, I know some of the discussions at Planning East was about the noise next to the pub, and I do note that they have actually got additional high specification acoustic separating walls with sound insulation, which I think will be good. I am concerned from the perspective of whether the infrastructure generally in Stapleford Abbots can cope with this. But having said that, I don't think that's necessarily a planning issue as far as we're concerned. I understand that the highways are now happy about the access. I would have one thing to say, though, that having driven round there, it is a corner, a blind corner to that entrance to the pub, and whether there could perhaps be a condition that there is a vehicle activated signage to show that there is a road or an access just round that corner. I know that was one of the concerns last time, and that, I think, would perhaps allay some of the fears. But again, I am not sure that I can see anything within this that is non-compliant with policy. And that is what I feel I'll be looking at. Thank you.
Councillor Allgood.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Overdevelopment of the sites, I actually quite liked the plan that I saw. I accept that it might be slightly small but for the actual properties, but I actually thought it was quite good. So it comes to overdevelopment of the village. I'm not in a position to sort of, and I'd like some help from my fellow councillors, whether that saying it's overdevelopment of the village is part of, and not part of the local plan is a reason to refuse on planning permission. I'm basing it on what I'm seeing in front of me, I'm inclined to agree with the actual development. I have no objections, especially if it was somewhere else. I'd be sort of saying that's fine. So I will bow to my fellow colleagues on whether it's overdevelopment and that's actually against the plan, and therefore that's part of a planning reason to object. And that's the only thing I've got to say on it.
Thank you. Councillor Morris, then we'll go back to the points. Thank you.
Oh yeah, yeah. So I did go on the site visit to this. I'm also persuaded by the argument that there could be a good downsizing opportunity. So I think that did count for me. For the traffic, yeah, that corner looks dangerous to me. I did ask the question as to whether you could impose a condition on some kind of traffic calming measure. But Suki, is that the answer to that was no, basically? Was it because Essex Highways have approved it?
As you correctly stated in your correspondence to me, that there is another application which will be presented to yourselves today by my colleague Mohammed, which includes a requirement listed by the Highways Authority to require a vehicle activated screen which indicates fast motorists to slow down. But because that was asked for by Highways, and who would have had justification through assessing the application in their professional judgment, they believed it was necessary for that application, but not in this case. So, given the lack of requests from the Highway Authority for one in this application, we couldn't justify it on this scheme.
Okay, thanks.
Councillor Dad, coming back. Sorry.
Yeah, and so the only other question was about the overdevelopment question and whether that could be. I mean, I would take on board the parish council's comment on that, but I don't know. Is that something that could form an objection to this, a reason for refusal, or is that? I don't know. That's just me asking for advice, really, Suki.
Okay. Thank you, councillor. So overdevelopment can be a reason for refusal, but there's got to be a harm associated with the overdevelopment. So, for instance, is it harmful to the spatial characteristics of the area? Is it harmful to neighbouring residential amenity? If you believe that it will cause something of that nature, or there's insufficient parking, or which is as a result of the overdevelopment, there's too many units on the site, those things, if you've got proper planning justification to describe it as overdevelopment, yes, it can be defended, but there needs to be a reason for the overdevelopment and not just use that phrase as a reason to refuse it.
Sorry, Councillor Dad, coming back.
Can I come back about conditions? I understand the situation about vehicle activated. signage. But I went on the site visit as well, and I did speak to the publican, and I said to him, you don't have a sign. Some pubs do have a sign before they get there, which warns people, and it doesn't just warn people who know the pub's there, it warns traffic that's going through that there is a pub and an entrance to the pub. And if we can't have a condition from highways, I'm wondering whether it's possible to ask if the publican can do a notice indicating that the entrance is round a blind corner or something similar. I don't know if that's possible, Suki.
He can if it's within its own red line of the site. So if you can require that and it doesn't harm the visibility displays, as long as it's positioned, so we can have it as a condition where the highways check its position and appearance, and as long as they're satisfied with its position and appearance and it's within the red line of the site, i.e. in the applicant's ownership, then yeah, we can do that. So what you're not saying one of those electronic displays that are put on the road and are controlled by highways, you're actually asking for sort of the applicant instructing someone to install one on his site instead. But I don't know how visible it would be.
Can I come back? Yeah. Come back on that. I know that, for example, the pub at Toot Hill has directions on a road that's not owned by it. So they presumably had to get permission from highways, but it still gives an indication. It was something like that that might actually warn people if you can't have a vehicle activated signage. Another sign might indicate if there's a pub, there's going to be an entrance. That was my thought.
We can put it on as an informative, but we can't require them to do it.
Yeah. Councillor Matthews.
Thank you, Chairman. I sort of looked over the conditions again and I didn't notice it, so maybe Suki can highlight it to me if it is there. My concern is around further development of the pub. It's great to hear that the pub is thriving at the moment, but I would really not want to see that changing in the future and that not being the community asset it is. And is there any condition in terms of restriction on the permitted development for the public house itself? Obviously part of it's going to retain as a public house so that there isn't further development if we're a couple of years down the line and go, oh, actually now the pub's not viable, now that gets turned into more properties as well. Is there a condition, or if there isn't, can we put one in along that line?
We can put one in, but just to note that actually that I think, yeah, we can put a condition in to say permitted development rights. I think permitted development rights on pubs are quite limited because they are seen as a community asset. So I will just double check and make sure that if there are any permitted development rights that they removed as part of the permission.
Yeah, I think it would have to be another planning application. Another planning application would have to come before us, before anything like that happened. As one of the people that did the site visit, I think this improves the look of that. I mean, the pub needs some work on it. It needs some money spent on it. And talking around and looking at it, I think this development will give us some money spent on the pub as well. I mean, it's got some really nice features, the exterior of it. I find it difficult to go further. The highways have had no objection to this. Whether the pub, and I agree with Suki that we go for an informative, that the pub puts some signage further down the road indicating that it is there. But I can see no reason under planning to go any further with this. Can we now go to a vote, members? The officer's recommendation is for approval. All those subject to the 106 agreement, which is part of the agenda. All those in favour, please show.
7 in favour, Chairman.
Against?
Nil, Chairman.
Abstentions?
And 1 abstention.
Thank you. That application has been granted. Thank you. We can now resume normal service. Other chairs are available. That's
Thank you, members. Right, members, we are continuing now with item 10 on the agenda. This is EPF 092124 at 14 Ticehurst Hill, Loughton. We have a recommendation for approval. Before I hand over to Mohammed, who is presenting this, I would like to thank councillors who took time to attend the site visit on Monday. I think it was very useful. So thanks to both the members who attended and indeed the officers for their time for that site visit on Monday.
Chairman, could you just confirm that the Councillor Ames is back on there? And as you Isa.
Absolutely. Right, I am sorry, I did omit one thing. I just have to confirm now that Councillor Amos has returned to seating within the membership, with the committee membership area, and Councillor Allgood has stood down as substitute member. And Councillor Will Hoffman and myself have returned to chair and vice chair. Sorry, but thank you. All right. Okay, if I'd like to just hand over to Mohammed now. Good evening, Mohammed.
Thank you, Chair. So item 10 relates to 14 Ticehurst Hill in Loughton. This application was deferred from the 7th August South Planning Committee for a member site visit, which took place on Monday. The proposal seeks to regularise the replacement dwelling. So turning to the slides, here we have the location plan. Here's the property outlined in blue. So here's the as-built replacement dwelling. Here's a different view. And here's the rear elevation. So here we have the approved and proposed site plan. So on the left-hand side is the approved site plan, allowed an appeal. And on the right-hand side, the proposed scheme before members. As you can see, there's no change in terms of the layout. Here we have the approved and proposed elevations. So these are the approved elevation as allowed an appeal. This is the as-built replacement dwelling. There are some minor changes, such as to the windows, to the size of the dormer, as set out in the report. So here's the approved and proposed street scene. So approved over here, and proposed over here. And again, with some minor changes to the fenestration and the size of the dormer. So just to summarise the case, so under the household application, EPF 0599 of 23, Permission was granted for partial demolition and extension and alterations. Following enforcement investigations, it was established that the works had gone beyond the scope of the householder planning permission, and the development in officer's opinion constitutes a replacement dwelling. As such, a full planning application was required to regularise the development, hence this application before members. So just to conclude, the works are near identical to the permitted scheme, and in officer's view, there are no defendable planning grounds to refuse this scheme. For these reasons, as set out in detail in the agenda, officers recommend granting conditional planning permission. Thank you, Chair. Mr. End.
Thank you. We have one registered speaker on this item, Paul Clark, the applicant's agent. Good evening.
Good evening, and thank you for letting me speak in support of my client Bala Balendra's application for retention of number 14 Ticehurst Hill as substantially reconstructed and extended. Your officer report recommends that you approve this application, and so you may be wondering why I'm taking your time here tonight. Indeed, I've only one issue with your officer's report. The report points out, which is true, that the application is near identical to the scheme allowed on appeal in September 2023. For that reason, my client was expecting your decision would be near identical to the decision given on appeal in September 2023, including the conditions imposed. I note that the representation made by the Loughton Town Council is that the applicant should be forced to comply with the planning inspector's original conditions. Indeed, my client is very anxious that that should be the case. He wants to return himself as near as he possibly can to the position he was in when the appeal was allowed. The conditions your officer recommends are identical to those the planning inspector imposed, but with 3 additions, and it's those that I want to talk to you about tonight. One, that's condition 5, would require the provision of an electric vehicle charging point. Now, that would be condition 5, but if you look at condition 1, that already requires compliance with the approved drawings, and one of the drawings you are being asked to approve shows the provision of an electric vehicle charging point. And indeed, those of you who went on the site visit on Monday will have seen that it has been installed. So that condition 5 is unnecessary. I don't think it does any harm. I don't think my client objects to it, but it just takes ink and paper, which you don't need to have. The second condition, which I wanted to comment on, is condition number 6, which requires an ecological enhancement scheme to be submitted for the council's approval. Now, this covers a point which the inspector already covered in his appeal. If you look at paragraph 12 of the inspector's appeal decision of 2023, he included a condition requiring the planting of 4 trees, and he gave as his reasons that it was in the interests of the level of biodiversity. Now, he uses the word biodiversity rather than ecological enhancement, but he's actually talking about the same thing. And so that concern was clearly already taken care of in the original appeal decision, and if you replicate the inspector's conditions, you've already covered it. You don't need a new condition. The third new condition is number 7, withdrawing permitted development rights, which the inspector did not do.
You do need to wind up very quickly, please.
Yeah, it's your prerogative to impose conditions which you feel necessary, and I've got no argument that I can put against that condition. And your officer's report explains why you need it.
Finish now, thank you.
So it's only condition 6 that we would ask you to consider and not include in your decision.
Thank you. Right, okay. Just checking, we haven't got any non-members who wish to speak, or ward members. So in that case, we will open up for discussion quickly, members. Just before we do open discussion, if I could just refer back to the planning officer, please, if you could just give us some advice on the agent's concerns about some of the conditions. Thank you, Mohammed.
Chair, it's officer opinion the conditions proposed are relevant to the scheme. This is a replacement dwelling. We're not dealing with a household extension over here. It's a brand new replacement house. And so the electric charging point condition just seeks to ensure there is one there in perpetuity. It does specify sole retained. Condition 1 doesn't require it requires the development to be built in accordance with the plans but not retained. So that condition just reinforces that retention of electric charging point. And turning to the ecological, that is different to condition 4, I believe, which is regarding the trees. So condition 6 seeks ecological enhancements such as bat boxes, bird boxes, and so forth. That's required by policy DM1. Hence, officers consider that condition is justified in this case and does meet the test. Ultimately, it is up to members if they consider it should stay or not, but officers consider it is relevant.
Thank you. Okay. Yes, you are indeed. Councillor Walgood, want to speak now?
Yes, thank you. I think I'm speaking on behalf of the Loughton Town Council, and I think most of their arguments are not necessarily valid for planning in front of you, but they're very angry about basically the retrospective nature of this, how it changed over the circumstances. However, as a district councillor and being on planning, I can only advise you on the planning aspects of it. So if I look back at the reasons that they've actually asked to object, carbon footprint, it's not going to be a planning matter that we can put forward. So I'm doing this probably for the benefit of the people that are watching. So as the objections are, as I say, for planning purposes, not built in accordance with the previous consent, it's irrelevant. You're now looking at a brand new application. Is it out of keeping? When you look at the photos and when you did the site visit, you will see that the house is pretty much in the same line as the house, the front view is in to the neighbouring houses. So I would have to say it's not out of keeping. It's large. It's much larger than the other houses next to it. If you want to deem that as being out of keeping, then that might be an argument. But its actual style, its materials used, its both front and back is pretty much in keeping with character. So that then comes to overdevelopment, overbearing. It is huge. I don't disagree. Is it overbearing? It's the biggest one in that area. Now, I was going to stand up and say, yes, it's definitely overbearing. However, when I went on the site visit and then drove around the corner, there was an even larger property. So I feel that I can't even say, is it overbearing or is it out of keeping with the area? So I'm just telling it as it is, and I'm sorry for the town council who have got reasons to complain, and I totally agree, but I don't think I can support them in planning. Thank you.
Thank you. Members. Councillor Williamson.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, the site visit was very informative. Sometimes it's quite difficult looking at plans, but that did really put it into perspective. My only point is on this condition 6. We've always said that each application is treated on its merits. This is a new application, and this is something we now require. I see no problem in having condition 6 in there. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, Councillor Kaufman.
Thank you, Chair. There's only 2 things which I would like to just bring to the committee's attention. I don't think that's the most helpful picture because I mean, unless my eyes were deceiving me earlier, I think the right-hand side actually protrudes over the threshold onto the neighbouring property, which it's not a planning matter, but it's just a bit odd. And the thing that is most obvious are the enormous air conditioning condenser units on the sides of the building, both left side and right side, which is all well and good for the people that are living in the house. But if you live in the neighbouring property, if they don't have air conditioning and they've got their windows open during the summer, they're going to be presented with their windows facing what look to me like commercial grade air conditioning units. So I think there needs to be some sort of condition inserted that those air conditioning condenser units are run up to full power and we see how loud they are and whether or not there needs to be some sort of attenuation measure inserted. I mean, other than that, I struggle to find anything else to really pick up on, but that is a glaring, and it's not picked up on the drawings. Thank you.
Chair, if I may clarify?
Yes, please.
So
Thank
the
you.
AC units are not part of this application, so they would have to be regularised via a separate application, a noise survey submitted to demonstrate there's no noise impacts to neighbours, and the siting of the AC units are acceptable. So it's not part of this application.
How can that be? They're part of the house.
Now, thank you very much indeed for clarifying that. Thank you. Right, members, unless there's any other comments, I'm going to move this to the vote. We have a recommendation that the application is granted with the conditions listed. All those in favour of granting, please show.
7 in favour, Chairman.
Those against?
Nil, Chairman.
And abstentions? 2,
Chairman.
Thank you. That item has been granted. Thank you. Right. It has, sorry, it has been granted with the conditions stated in the report. Okay, moving on to item 11, EPF 1266-24, the Hedges, Harlow Road, Roydon. We have an officer recommendation to approve with conditions and subject to a section 106. I'd go back to Mohammed to present this, please.
Thank you, Chair. So item 11 relates to the Hedges in Roydon. This application is before members as the recommendation is for approval and at least 5 contrary representations have been received. The proposal is for the erection of 4 new residential dwellings, the retention of the existing dwelling, the Hedges, demolition of an outbuilding, along with car parking, landscaping and access. This is a revised scheme to EPF 0325 or 21, with the main change being the retention of the existing dwelling, the Hedges, which is a non-designated heritage asset. So here we have the location plan. So the area to be developed is outlined in red, and the area in blue is within the ownership of the applicant. So we have the Hedges over here, which is to be retained, and this building over here to be demolished. So here's an aerial view. The Hedges over here, the outbuilding over here, and the developable area outlined in red. So here's the proposed site plan. So again, a closer view, here's the Hedges. We have the access over here, and we have the 4 dwellings over here. And this section here is to deliver the biodiversity net gain. So here's the previous scheme that was dismissed at appeal. So if I go back, so we have the Hedges over here, and as part of the previous scheme, it was proposed to demolish the Hedges, which, as I mentioned, is a non-designated heritage asset, and have the access cut through, along with the 5 dwellings over here. And this appeal, it was dismissed largely on the loss of the heritage assets. So here's a 3D view of the proposal, the revised scheme with the 4 units. Here's an image of the heritage asset. And here's a view of the access, the area to be developed and this outbuilding over here to be demolished. So just to summarise the case, the proposal in officer's view has overcome the recent appeal with the retention of the house dwelling, the hedges. The proposal was found by the inspectorate to not be inappropriate development in the greenbelt, and there is no compelling reason to come to a different view with this proposal. There would be some benefits from the construction and occupation of the homes, and the proposal is in keeping with the area, will safeguard neighbouring amenities, and also deliver 10% biodiversity net gain along with some of the highway improvements, such as the vehicle activated sign, as secured by a condition. For these reasons, officer recommendation is to grant conditional planning permission subject to a completing section 106 legal agreement. Thank you, Chair. That's the end.
Thank you, Mohammed. Members, we do have one registered speaker on this item, Danny Simmons, the agent. Thank you, and thank you for your patience this evening.
That's fine. Good evening, committee. My name is Danny Simmons. I'm from RPS, and I'm acting on behalf of the applicant. Committee, in light of the fact that there's no other speakers on this item, I can be fairly brief. As was described by your planning officer, there was an earlier application on this site for 5 units, which included the demolition of the Hedges thatched cottage building at the front of the site. This earlier scheme was dismissed at appeal in 2022, but whilst the appeal was dismissed, this was solely on the basis of the harm arising from the loss of the Hedges cottage, which is a non-designated heritage asset. But importantly, as your officer explained, the appeal inspector determined that the site represented an infill site in a village, and as a result concluded that the proposal was not inappropriate development in the Greenbelt. And committee, that conclusion is highly material to your consideration of the current application. So accordingly, there's no legitimate Greenbelt objection or grounds to reject this current application. Committee, in light of the appeal decision, for the avoidance of doubt, this scheme does retain the Hedges cottage, and indeed the scheme has been drawn up to retain its setting. So therefore the previous heritage issue falls away. With regard to traffic, you should be aware there's no objection from County Highways, and the issue was raised on the previous application about a vehicle activated sign. In this case, it is something that's been suggested by the County Highways officer, and indeed, as a result, the applicant is prepared to provide that, which will have the effect of slowing traffic down on Harlow Road. In terms of drainage, likewise, there's no objection from the Council's drainage officer, and indeed we're proposing a sustainable urban drainage system which will ensure that there will be no increase in flood risk arising from the proposals both on site and in the surrounding area. Your planning officer conveniently summarised the benefits arising from the proposals, so accordingly we consider this new application has merit. Thank you for your time. Thank you.
Members, in that case, have we got any comments and applications from any, firstly the non-ward members, and then Councillor Whitbread as a ward member?
Thank you, Chairman. And can I say that I support this application in its new state, and welcome the improvements made to it, and particularly the retention of hedges, which is a part of the street scene in that locality. I'm sure the Parish Council will take heart from the fact of the VAS sign being included. We've got awful speeding issues in Harlow Road, and it will actually assist with a LHP scheme that I have further down the road into the junction with Harlow, where Harlow Road joins Epping Road. So actually this is, that is the positive. Of course, I understand the parish had issues over drainage, but it appears that has been addressed between the applicant and officers. So with that in case, I would support the application, Chairman.
Thank you. Right, members, open for discussion. Councillor Lee.
It's the actual entrance. It doesn't look that wide. Is it wide enough for vehicles to pass? And will the bin lorry get down there for the rubbish? I'm assuming they've all got bins.
I'm sure Mohammed can clarify that for us.
That's correct. The visibility display and the width of the access has been found sound by the highways team. The width of the road is approximately 5.4 metres, so it can accommodate a refuse truck along with turning space over here. Hope that answers the question.
Yes, thank you very much indeed. Thank you. Councillor Williamson.
Thank you, Chair. Since the appeal decision that it's not inappropriate development in the green belt, I don't think we've got anywhere to go. The only difference is obviously the layout of the units, and I've got no issues with the current layouts.
Thank you. Councillor Ramos.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I have to say, the definition that the planning inspector made to infill was not the one that I previously understood, and it's not in our local plan. However, having said that, if that is the view of the planning inspector, and having heard the comments also from Councillor Whitbread tonight, I would be prepared to support this application.
Thank you. Any further comment speakers? Councillor Morris.
Oh, yeah, I'm going to support the application. I think all the objections that were raised have been dealt with. Yeah, I did check beforehand about access for emergency and refuse vehicles, and that's all good. So I think, yeah, I don't think there's any reason not to go ahead and support the application.
Thank you. Any further comments? In that case, members, I think we can go to the vote. We have an officer recommendation to approve the application with the conditions stated in the report and subject to a Section 106 legal agreement. All those in favour, please show.
Unanimous, Chairman.
Thank you. That application has been granted, subject to the conditions stated in the report and subject to the Section 106 agreement. Thank you. Right, members, we move on to our final application for tonight. This is EPF 130324, the land adjacent to 167 The Dale, Waltham Abbey. We have an officer recommendation to approve with conditions, and the officer presenting this is Marie Claire. Thank you very much indeed.
Agenda item 12 relates to land adjacent 167 Round Hills, not 167 The Dale as reported within the agenda. It's a triangular site located at the junction of Round Hills and The Dale, and the proposal is for a 2-storey, 2-bedroom dwelling. It's currently an open grassed area site with trees, and the site backs onto a row of single-storey garages. I'll just move my cursor to show you. That's the garages at the rear of the site. The site is not the full grass area. It's only partial part of the site that is grass. This side here is not part of the site, and that is outside of the site and will remain grassed. The site roughly extends out towards the trees that you can see in the top picture, and the bottom picture is just the other view when you're coming from the other side of Round Hills. This is a revised scheme to a previous refusal which was dismissed at appeal. The previous application was refused on 3 grounds: design, highways, and the impact on the FSAC. The planning inspector upheld the design and the FSAC reasons. The inspector was satisfied with the partial loss of the green open space. The proposed dwelling will be provided with 2 off-street parking spaces, just located where I'm moving my cursor, and a private amenity space. It will sit along the same building line as the property on the other side of the road, which is 167 Round Hills. The application includes some street scene modelling, which shows the different views and how the site will sit within the street scene. The elevations show that it is a fairly contemporary design, with the first floor contained within the asymmetric roof slope, with contemporary framed box dormers. And the floor plans show the 2 bedrooms at first floor and separate kitchen with living dining at ground floor. The proposal meets the required space standards, does not result in any excessive harm to amenity, and is now considered an acceptable design, subject to the applicants agreeing to a legal agreement for the required contributions for FSAC. The Office of Recommendation is for approval. For clarity, this is the previous scheme that was dismissed at appeal. It was actually for 2 flats, a first floor and ground floor flat. And as you can see, the current scheme before us is a much smaller scheme, both in size, scale, bulk, and also in footprint. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you. Right, before we go any further, I did, of course, omit to say before we started the item that, of course, Councillor Matthews, you are, of course, the ward member for this application, I think. No, don't think you are. Got you on my list as being the ward member.
The ward is Waltham Abbey, South and Rural.
In that case, could I invite you to just change sides? I am sorry.
Councillor Matthews, could you take your label as well, please?
Scoring runs. 3.
Okay.
You may want to clarify that there is a substitute.
Yes, no. As you know, just for clarification, that there isn't a substitute just for this one item. But Councillor Matthews, would you like to speak as a ward member, or obviously we could come back to you if you'd prefer?
The applicant is...
No, there is an agent, sorry. I do apologise. My apologies. We do have an applicant's agent. I am sorry. Paul Burgess, the applicant's agent.
Hello there.
Hello. My apologies for almost forgetting you.
That's okay. Proposals for this site have been the subject of a planning appeal and subsequent pre-application discussions with your officers. Whilst the appeal for 2 flats on the site was dismissed at appeal in November, the inspector concluded that the partial loss of grassland was acceptable, but the design of the building was not. Revised proposals with lower ridge heights and lower eaves heights were sent to your officers for pre-application feedback in January of this year, and the principle of residential development was accepted, subject to reducing the mass of the proposed house option further. As a result, the scheme before you today is for a modest 2-bedroom house with a roof ridge 2.2 metres lower than the appeal scheme and an eaves height 2.9 metres lower. In response to concerns raised relating to the cramped appearance of the appeal scheme, the new proposal would have a considerably smaller building footprint of 52 square metres compared to 95 square metres. The position of the proposed house would align with the building line of 167 the Dale opposite, thereby reflecting the context of the local area. To overcome the inspector's concerns, the application proposes to retain 95 square metres of open green space accessible to the public compared to 27 with the appeal proposals. The development would not encroach within the root protection zones of the large oak and ash trees located on land to the west, and additional tree planting is also proposed along sections of the western site boundary. The officer's report confirms that the application therefore complies with local plan policy DM9 by achieving a high quality of design and contributing to the character and amenity of the area. In terms of neighbouring properties, it goes on to conclude that there will be no harmful impact with regards to overlooking, loss of light, overbearing and visual impact. To conclude, the proposed development has been the subject of several amendments through the planning process, and is now fully in accordance with the local plan. We therefore trust that members will support the application and resolve to grant planning consent subject to a Section 106 agreement and the planning conditions set out in the officer's report. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much indeed. Right, do I have any contributions from non-ward members or ward members? Councillor Matthews.
Thank you, Chair. Just to say that I reluctantly support this application. I don't particularly like the design of it, although I don't think it constitutes to a planning reason of why we can't approve it this evening. So I will be supporting the officer's decision.
Thank you. Members. Councillor Lee. We're highly honoured, thank you.
Well, I'm not happy about the loss of the oak tree. Oak trees take far longer to get to the size they are than any other trees. They drink more water than any other trees, and with all the rain, that's important. And it's a beautiful tree. I'm not so bothered about the other tree, but I'm not happy for this to happen, that those two trees have got to be removed, especially the oak tree. And then if they would take them away and they said, oh yeah, they're going to stick some others there, then in 10 years' time they'll be moaning that the trees have ruined the house. So I don't object to a house by any means, but I'm not happy at all at the fact that that is a really lovely British, English oak tree, not a foreign tree.
Thank you. Any other members? Councillor Morris.
Oh yeah, I think, thanks very much. The downside of this application is we're going to lose a nice bit of green space. It's very nice on that corner, and yeah, it's got some nice trees as well. But the proposed dwelling is reduced in size from the previous one. It leaves a reasonable amount of green space, so I think that's a positive. And all the other objections and problems with it have been answered through various bodies like highways and drainage authority and so on. So I think, yeah, it is a downside that we're losing some green space and trees, and I totally agree with that. But having said that, I still think we can support the application. It gives us housing that we need. You know, it does fit into the space, and it's not too damaging for that area of Round Hills.
Thank you. Thank you. I'd just like to ask the planning officer, is there anything you can add about the tree? And
yeah, on the, it's just the smaller of the trees that's been removed. I don't know if you can quite see it on the PowerPoint display there. There's the red dash line. The two larger trees on the site are being retained. Just want to make that clear. So it is a smaller one. I don't know the exact species, but it is the smaller one there that's been removed.
I think the one you're referring to might be not being felled. I think it is.
Then the oak tree roots.
Yes.
They're our best trees.
Yes, but I think we need to consider that. I think it is. I think the more prominent trees are being saved. It's, thank you. Councillor Adekani.
Just going back to the issue of the trees, obviously at this stage there's sufficient distance, but in terms of 20 years time, 15 years time, if the building is not found on mini pile, we'll have the same scenario with other trees. So you're going to let this building to be founded on normal foundation, or is going to be requested to be done on mini piles? Because you don't want to be sitting here in 10, 15 years time and say that this oak tree is causing settlement in the corner of this house, cut this oak tree. And that's what you're going to be facing.
Yeah, Councillor Williamson.
Yeah, I think that's a building control matter, not a planning matter. Yeah.
You read my mind, thank you.
Just to jump in there, sometimes we do ask for specific foundations, but in this case we haven't, and they did submit an ARB report and a tree constraints plan. So in this case it's obviously not necessary to have the specialist foundations, so there's no condition attached.
So you have received the report?
Yeah.
Okay, members. Did Councillor Williamson speak?
No. Sorry, misunderstand.
Okay, all right, okay. All right, okay then, members, if I can move this to the vote. We have an officer recommendation to grant planning permission with the conditions in the report and subject to the agreement of a Section 106 legal agreement. All those in favour of granting, please show.
Six, Chairman.
All those against?
0, Chairman.
And abstentions?
2, Chairman.
Thank you. In that case, that application has been granted with the conditions detailed in the report and subject to the agreement of a Section 106 legal agreement. Members, that brings us to the end of the planning applications on tonight's agenda. So we moved swiftly to agenda item 13. Any other business?
No other business, Chairman.
Thank you. In that case, members, I am closing the meeting at 21:45 and good night. Thank you very much indeed, members and other members of the council.